Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I would like to talk to you about the scars of dyslexia and dyscalculia. And more specifically, I want to talk about the role of the school. So before we begin, I want to start off with this short little story for you. It was written by an adult called Stephanie who has dyslexia. So she says, I didn't know I was dyslexic. So I just thought that my classes were really difficult. I wasn't keeping up where my friends were. I simply thought some people are born more clever and some people aren't. I thought I just wasn't a smart person. The real struggle started when I was in secondary school. I would mess about to get out of class. And while I could keep up by designing ways to cope, I would only just get by. I got put back a year and I was moved into the lowest ability group, the nurture group. I was put with young people who were on the other side of the spectrum to me socially and emotionally. I just didn't fit in. As we go through this presentation, I'm going to really focus on the emotional side of dyslexia. So I'll remind you what dyslexia and dyscalculia are very briefly. I'll talk about the importance of early identification, and then I'll show you the emotional, often forgotten side of what dyslexia and dyscalculia can do to somebody's life. Then we'll move on to how we can ensure children thrive, and more importantly, what schools can really do to help and to change the course of a child's life. So my name is Rebecca Good. I am a chartered educational psychologist, and I'm director of a busy psychological practice in Dublin, Ireland. And I'm also the director of an online learning platform called Education Elephant that's there to support carers, schools, and parents that are looking after anybody that has an additional learning need. So let's get started. What is dyslexia and dyscalculia? Well, most people probably know this already, but just for a reminder, 20% of children have a learning disability. That's worldwide. Now, dyslexia is the most common of all of these learning disabilities, and it's a difficulty in learning to read or interpret words or letters or other symbols. But it has nothing to do with general intelligence. And it's the same for dyscalculia. The prevalence rates of dyscalculia are about the same as dyslexia, but it's to do with maths. So it's a specific and persistent difficulty with maths. And while the rates are the same, they often co-occur. So dyslexia and dyscalculia occur together. So most people know about the effects of dyslexia on school performance. We know that children with dyslexia will struggle. We know that they have barriers to overcome in their lives in order to fulfill their dreams and to succeed, particularly in school. Everybody knows about the academic difficulties that these children and adults can face. They struggle to learn to read, spell, and they struggle to do maths. But one of the most commonly missed areas is the emotional side. And actually, it's probably the most important. Teachers and parents are very good at noticing problems with spelling or reading or writing and maths, but they can miss the serious emotional effects and upset that dyslexia and dyscalculia can bring as a child moves through school and as the pressure on them is greater and greater. And these are what I call the scars of dyslexia. Now, the slides are moving a little bit ahead of me here, so I don't know if it's possible to go back one. I talk too much. Thank you. I just want to show you this slide. This is called the Matthew effect. Normally, I show this slide to show how the academic gap can grow between children as they get older. The Matthew effect is casually called the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we use it often to demonstrate how important early intervention is. If you look at the graph, it's showing you on the bottom when children start school. They come in with similar levels of ability. Some are a little bit weaker, some are a bit better, but they're relatively close to one another. However, as time goes on, which you can see on the bottom axis, struggling readers without a lot of support, and the same goes for maths, won't make progress, and their peers continue to make progress. So educationally, the rich get richer educationally, and the poor get poorer, because you can see the academic achievement gap is getting wider and wider and wider. Now, this graph, as I said, I usually use to talk about achievement. However, it also represents how the mental health of children the gap can begin to get wider and wider as they get older if left unsupported. Children that have a learning difficulty often don't understand why they are struggling when their peers are not. And because of this, they can experience frustration and anger, and then the mental health difficulties begin. Time and time again, children will hear their parents and their teachers saying, "She's such a bright child, if only she would try harder." Ironically, nobody knows how hard a dyslexic or dyscalculic child is trying. And the pain of failing to meet other people's expectations can be so damaging to a child. When you take this alongside the inability of the child to meet their own goals, it can become very, very damaging. Research actually confirms that adults that were not identified early in their school lives went through life feeling inadequate, with low self-esteem, a lot of frustration, and a lot of anger. Most of the people in the research say they had low self-esteem because they weren't identified early in school, and they went through carrying a lot of bitterness and a lot of resentment because of the emotional pain they had to go through.